Okay, so Martin Ivanov is going to tell us what is going on with the latest JavaScript stuff. So please welcome Martin Ivanov.
I hope you're enjoying the lecture so far. I will try to be to keep going with the good vibes. But let me first introduce myself. My name is Martin Ivanov, and currently I'm part of Accedia's development team. And in the past several years, I'm mainly working as a front-end developer. During those years, I have seen many developers which spoke JavaScript and many developers which didn't know JavaScript at all. And the common between them was that everyone didn't know what ECMAScript is, or at least a few of them knew. And to be honest, I didn't know too. So I decided to dig deeper and share my learnings with you. So, what we are going to talk about today. First, we will start with brief history of JavaScript and how exactly it was standardized into ECMAScript. I will tell you who standardized ECMAScript and what is the exact process of standardization, how exactly one feature goes to the new standard from being an idea throughout the development cycles to being part in one of the new standards. And in the end of the presentation, we'll walk through some of the cool features I considered worth mention you can expect in the following years. So, JavaScript was initially developed in 1995 by one man working for Netscape whose name was Brandon Ake, or Brandon H. I am not sure how it's pronounced. So this man needed a language which can help him with developing better UX. So the legend says that in 10 days he created JavaScript. The first and the initial name of JavaScript was Mocha. It went through other names like LiveScript, something like TypeScript. I'm not sure how exactly it was called. But in the end, after his fellow developers, colleagues in Netscape reviewed his work, they decided that strangely, this language is good and they should use it and they should standardize it. So how they decided to name JavaScript was pretty straightforward. Java was popular in those days, and because it was popular, they wanted a similar name. So they added script to Java and JavaScript was born. After 2 years of consideration and writing specifications for the language, they took this language to ECMA, which is the European Computer Manufacturers Association. And those guys are responsible for standardizing whatever technical is taken to them. So, ECMA standardized JavaScript in ACMA 262. And also, there was formed a technical committee named TC39, which was responsible for developing the future improvements of JavaScript, the future ECMAScript versions. This technical committee was formed by developers from the most popular companies in those days, like Microsoft, Google, and etc. and etc. These companies were sending most of their best developers to the TC39's gatherings in order to improve the standard and to develop the new features. So, in the next 2 years, in 1998 and 1999, two new versions of the standard were live. But the developers behind TC39 decided that they should create something bigger. They wanted to include into ES4 all the cool things from other popular languages those days, like C#, C++, Java, and etc. And they gathered on one meeting and decided to list all these features and start developing them. But like every time when cool and brave people gather and they want to create something big, nothing happens. And in 2009, after 10 years of consideration, discussions, struggling to create ES4, they decided to drop the idea. So what they did afterwards, they decided that everything which is developed and completed by the end of 2009 should be put in ES5, and ES5 was live. ES5 is the most popular standard nowadays. Every transpiler is transpiling the JavaScript you write into ES5 most of the times. So they not only decided to drop everything for ES4 and give the community ES5, but they decided that they should change the whole development lifecycle of the standard. And they decided to spend the next few years in working towards this goal, working towards this new better process. So after 6 years of discussions, they came up with the new life cycle for creating JavaScript standards. The first thing they decided was no listing of all the features they want to include in the new standard, but trying to involve the community and deliver new releases on a yearly basis. All of these releases, the features in all of these releases were strictly developed, and they went through one strict development life cycle with 5 phases. Also, they wanted to involve the community more. They decided that everyone who wants to submit their idea and wants to help JavaScript to become better could do it. So the TC39 committee became just the people who decide if something is good or not, but the community became the driving factor of the standardization. So, how can anyone contribute to this standard? The first thing is to get your idea straight, go to the ECMA repository in GitHub and check if your idea is not submitted already. Also, you can check this forum, ES Discuss, which is the unofficial communication point for everything new in JavaScript. If you think that you have the best idea for your for loop, or you want to change entirely the way how classes are created in JavaScript, you should go here and check if it's not already proposed. So, if it's not already proposed and your idea is good, then it's ready to go into the first real development cycle of the process. So how you do it? You go to the repository, which I already mentioned, where all the current proposals which are in development phases are listed, and you submit your idea as an issue. Afterwards, the developers in the TC39 committee review your idea, and somebody who likes your idea very much becomes your champion. What does this mean? Your champion is obligated to bring into discussion your idea on one of the yearly meetings of the committee. Maybe here is the point to mention that the committee is gathering 6 times a year, 5 times in the United States and 1 time in Europe. And on these meetings, all the new proposals for the standard are being discussed. So, if your idea is good and the whole committee likes it, it goes to the next stage of the development life cycle, and here you should provide a formal specification of your idea, and also implementation of it. What does implementation means? You could write it as a polyfill for bubble, or you can write it as improvement of some of the browser engines like V8 or Chromium or etc. So if you provide all these things and the committee decides that it's ready and there are no other problems with your idea, it goes to a candidate stage. This means that the whole community can now see your specifications, try to implement it wherever they want, and they can test the implementations which are already provided, if they are such, yours or other person's implementation. So if everything is completed, the community likes your idea, and the committee signs off that your paper is good to go to the real standard, your proposal becomes finished. But this does not mean that it's in some standard. So to your idea, going to the standard is also included in one other process, the yearly process which I mentioned previously. Every year, in the beginning of February, these 39 are gathering and they're incorporating all the finished proposals they think are good to go to the next standard, and they are producing a draft standard for this year. This means that everyone from the community can check this standard, tell the committee if there are any problems with some of the features, or they think that something is not good to go for usage in wider audience. And if everything went good, if everything goes good, in the beginning of March, this draft proposal becomes official. From March to June, there is time for the committee to sign off this proposal and send it to ECMA. And after it's sent to ECMA, they have 2 months to check if everything is formally, in terms of compliance, good to go as official standard. And in the beginning of July every year, there is a new version of ECMAScript. And from 2016 till now, there is a new version of the standard on 1st of July every year, for July morning. So, like I mentioned in the beginning of my presentation, I will show you some things which I consider cool, which are currently proposals for future improvements of the standard. The first thing which I'm waiting for many years to come into JavaScript are built-in private methods and fields. How they will be used? They are very simple to use, and you should just put hashtag before the field or the method you want to set as private. Nothing else. It's strange in my opinion. Maybe putting just the private keyword is better, but everyone from the committee has signed off this proposal, and probably it will be live in the next version of the standard in 2021. So another cool thing is the optional chaining. This is something which probably every other modern language has as a built-in function, but JavaScript doesn't have it. The question mark operator, which helps us to not check, to not get errors when we try to access something from within an object. It could be used in 2 ways. The first way is just trying to get some property from an object, and the other way is to use it as a chained object to question marks and the default value if something in the chain is undefined. Another thing which is worth to mention, which we can expect probably after 2 years, are the decorators, the built-in decorators in JavaScript. Probably everybody in this room know what a decorator is, so I won't explain it. And the way we use it in JavaScript is with the keyword decorator. Here is an example how you can make a set method into a class with a decorator. So moving forward, here we have a new datetime API. As you probably have seen in your experience, using datetime in JavaScript is awful. And from my experience, I had many struggles with working with date times. So not only I. There is a proposal for making better implementation of the datetime API, but now it's in draft stage, so this is only an idea. Considering that you can consider that it could be changed in the next years, and probably this will be live after 3 to 5 years, because it's in the second stage of the proposal lifecycle. Another thing you can expect in the following years are the observables. Probably if you are coming from the Angular world, you know what observable is. You have used RxJS or other library for observables, but after a few years you can expect observables as a built-in objects in built-in functionality, to be certain, in JavaScript. I also won't explain what observable is, probably you know. And the last few things which are worth to mention are first the do expressions. What this means, just the lexical blocks for with which you can process some logic and assign the result of this block to some variable, or if you are using React or JSX, it's very easy to make your JSX better with better readability. Here is an example for it. And the last thing which I want to share with you is the slice notation. I don't like the old way for taking some parts of arrays or strings or objects in JavaScript, but now somebody has proposed this idea. Probably if you are using Ruby, I think the syntax was the similar. You can now access parts of arrays, strings or objects with just putting the elements you want to get from the specific object with this syntax. Like for the array 1, 2.3, or for if you want to put to get the last part of the hello world string, you just tell the language to JavaScript to give you everything after the 6th element. So there are many other cool stuff which I can share with you, but probably we won't have the time to talk about everything. So now is the time for questions. I'm here to share everything I learned with you.
Okay, we have some time for questions. So who's first?
Hi, thanks for the nice talk. Are all of those suggestions already at the finished state?
I didn't hear you well.
Are all of those suggestions that you showed already at the finished state?
No one of them is into finished state. The first two are in candidate state, and the last ones are probably expected in the next 2 to 5 years. They are in the first 3 stages of the cycle.
Okay, some other questions? I have a question. Can I propose to the community to remove some things from JavaScript?
It would be cool, but you can't.
Okay, I would like to remove a lot of things from there, but any more questions? Come on, don't be shy.
Yeah, thanks for the nice talk. I have a question. What's the most significant inclusion in the last two standards of the ECMAScript?
Probably in the last two, there is nothing significant, but maybe in 2016, 2017, the await and the sync you probably know, and the anonymous functions, the let and const, which you mostly know. But in the last few years, there is nothing cool, I think.
More questions? Yep.
I'm interested in the process, the standardization process that happens. Do you know of any disagreements or disputes and how those get resolved, or is it?
If you want to read about the disagreements and the disputes, you can go to the repository, and there you can find page a README for every new proposal. And on these READMEs, you can find links for the meeting notes of the meetings of TC39 on which this feature was discussed, and you can find everything which is worth to mention about those discussions. There was one person there with a question.
Can you explain more about this do expressions? What is it?
The idea behind the do expressions is to have a lexical box in which you can process some code and assign it to some variable. I don't know what else I can mention. This is just an idea and is not well specified. So if you have, if you are interested in this, you can, like I mentioned to the other question, you can go to the repository and check the do expressions proposal.
More questions?
Hi, thanks for the talk. You have picked some nice features. If you had the opportunity to pick one that will go today in JavaScript and use it tomorrow, which one will be?
Probably better classes. The private methods, which I mentioned in the beginning, are a good start for this, but maybe improving the classes is the most needed thing in JavaScript, because currently people are using TypeScript for all the functionality which other languages like Java, C# and other ones are giving us by default, and I would like very much if we have better classes in JavaScript.
Right, some more questions? We have time.
There's one person.
Is it possible that there is a case scenario where a feature is proposed and it's not in the finished state, but some browser, for example, Chrome, designs to implement it?
If I get your question right, all of the browsers which are working with the TC39 committee are obligated to implement these proposals which are in finished state and put in some of the new standards into their engines. Because TC39 is built with the developers from one of the biggest companies. Chrome has people in the committee, Mozilla has people in the committee, everybody has people in the committee. They are just the stakeholders.
Thanks. So Do you think that in like maybe 5 years, people will be using old versions of the ECMAScript like ES5, or no one will use them and only use future versions?
It's like all the other languages. When new version is released, it's decision for the developer taking it into usage or not. You can use the first version of ECMAScript if you want. It's up to you.
With standards on a yearly basis, does someone make sure that they're backwards compatible? For example, ES5 with ES3, for example.
What? I'm not sure if I get your question right.
Backwards compatible, I think. I mean,
everything which works on the previous versions of the standard works in the current versions too, if I get your idea.
That was my question.
We have some more time? Questions? More questions? Please? Oh.
You did mention that in order for some idea to get discussed by the committee, it needs to be brought up by a champion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so how exactly does that work? A champion gets to bring up only one idea, or?
How much he wants. Just somebody from the committee should become your champion in order for idea to be discussed. Everyone could propose an idea. You have just to register as a contributor for the standard. And if someone likes your proposal, it's taken for a discussion. But afterwards, it's up to the committee for this proposal to be implemented.
Thank you.
Some more questions? I have one more question. So if I really like some new feature in JavaScript that is not released yet, realistically it's going to take a couple of years to be released and adopted into browsers, and there is already a Bubble plugin for it in order to prove the concept, can I just use the Bubble plugin and rewrite my code in a way that it uses this feature?
You can do it, but I will personally tell you not to do it.
Why is that?
Because it could be changed in the next years. These proposals are not something finished, and the community can tell that something from the proposal is not so good and it could be changed. So if you don't want to change the whole your code in the next years, you have to use the older versions, which are completed.
Stable, okay, cool. Final questions? Come on. None? Zero? Here we go.
Is there any requirement for a feature to be transpilable as when you want your feature to be implemented in the next script, into the ECMAScript? Should it be transpilable to the previous standard, or if it's able to be transpilable, that's good. If it's not, then
it depends to the feature.
But it's not a requirement.
It's not a requirement. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. More questions, because we have time? More questions? No? No one? Really? Okay. Like that.
so my question is it a good idea to put Bubble in your project to transpile back to, so you'll write ECMAScript 2019 and still support IE, so everything needs to be transpiled to ECMAScript 5. So is that a good idea?
it depends on the project. If the client wants support for ES5, you don't have any other option.
No, actually, my question was is it a good idea to do that because, well, the things you'll write will be very different from the things that will actually get executed. So is that a better idea than to just write something like ECMAScript 6 and forget about the new features?
I would like the second approach you mentioned. Probably it will be better. Just personal thought.
Right. Some more questions? Anyone willing to sing a song or something? Because we have like 10 more minutes, which is a whole lot. Final questions, please? Anyone? Yay.
My question is about the new date API. Do you know any context behind it? What are they trying to achieve with it? Maybe you have dug around more than I have, because I just learned about it.
Like I mentioned, it's just a proposal, like the do expressions, and there is nothing written formally why this is proposed. Just people don't think that the current datetime API in JavaScript is good, and they want to make it more intuitive to write.
Right. Somebody else? Please? Okay, so who gets the final word on what is going to get into the standard and what not?
The final word is of the committee, but after committee takes the draft proposal to the ECMA association, they decide if this is okay to be released as an official document and a standard.
Okay, so the community might like it, but they might decide to reject it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yay! It's working.
I'm not sure. I just want to ask: is the V8 integration with the new ECMAScript going in parallel, or your proposal should be implementable in the current V8 engine?
I can't answer this. I don't know.
So you got your last chance to ask a question. Your really last chance. Maybe one more chance.
Thank you, Martin, for the great talk. So, do you think that they are a little bit late with these cool features, and do you think they can stay in the race with other cool languages and technologies like TypeScript, for example? Because
I think that if they develop all the features which I mentioned, like the observables, the built-in observables, decorators, private fields, and etc., they will make TypeScript something needed in the future.
In the next 10 years, or?
Probably.